I don't tell this to people who know me. I don't post about it, and I don't want comments or theories. I'm writing it down because if I don't, the details keep sliding around in my head like a dream you can't stop having. I need it to be a list of facts, a line someone else can follow and see that I'm not exaggerating. If you've ever celebrated Halloween in a cemetery with your friends, you'll understand how easy it is to do something stupid and call it a joke. It was Halloween night, senior year. The plan started the way plans always start when you're 17 and bored. In someone's car, in a parking lot behind a strip mall that sells costumes 3 weeks a year and vitamins the rest of the time. There were 6 of us. Me, Adam, my girlfriend Lily, my best friend Jace, Jace's on-again girlfriend Brenna, and 2 other guys from track, Miguel and Harper. We weren't a tight friend group. We were a convenience group, people who happened to have nothing to do and whose parents thought we were at a basement party watching horror movies and eating pizza. We'd all heard the story about Greenwood Cemetery. Every town has that one place where the older kids swear they saw lights or heard whispers. Ours had a twist that made it sound more modern. Supposedly, if you turned your phone to airplane mode, put it on a headstone, and stood back 10 steps, you'd get a call at midnight from the person buried there. If you answered, you had to finish the conversation or they would finish it for you. The part you're about to judge us for is this. One of the names in Greenwood was someone we knew. His name was Ethan Rhodes. He died the year before, in a car accident on Route 7. He was a year older than us. He wasn't a friend. Not to me. He was just a kid who ran cross-country and worked weekends at the hardware store. After he died, the store put a picture of him by the cash register. His mom kept his phone number active for a while. I know because it was still in my contacts, and the E popped up every time I scrolled past. The carrier picture was a stupid meme he'd made. Someone said his mom couldn't bring herself to cancel it at first. We didn't go to Greenwood because of Ethan. That's the truth. We went because Jace had heard from his older brother that the phone thing was real, but only if you were stupid enough to turn on airplane mode and leave the flashlight on. Something about light, he said, waving a Funyuns bag. They like the attention. The they being dead people, Brenna said. She wore a cat costume, the ears crooked and the tail safety pinned to her skirt. The they being your brain, Lily muttered. The delayed notifications freak you out when you turn airplane mode off again. That's it. Harper kept trying to find the cemetery on his phone, but every time he typed Greenwood, it redirected to Greenwood in another county. I think they changed the listing, he said. People kept trespassing. We're not trespassing, Miguel said, like the idea offended him on a legal level. He planned to be a lawyer and had a way of making rules sound like math, absolute and exact. The outer gate isn't locked, and the town closes it at 11. We'll be out by then. Midnight, Jace said. Midnight is only a thing if we start the game at midnight, I said. It's 9:30. We'll be home by 11, and everyone's parents will still believe movies and pizza. We argued around it like kids pretending to be responsible until someone said, "Let's just go." And then the car doors slammed, and the world narrowed to 2 beams of headlights, and the thrill you get when you think you're doing something adults would call a bad idea. Greenwood is not one of those Gothic cemeteries with angel statues and crypts. It's a municipal grid of headstones that look the same until you're kneeling in front of one and trying to read the name. The fence is chain link. The trees are mostly bare by late October, and the wind moves through them with that dry sound like paper rubbing paper. There's a road that loops through and a dirt path cutting the newer section over the hill. The gate was open, like Miguel predicted. A sign read, "Closed at 11 p.m., and below that, no photography after dark." Jay said, "That's for respect." And Brenna said, "No, that's because every idiot in town comes here for clicks." We parked on the street and walked in, phones already out, because if we were going to be idiots, at least we'd document it. Airplane mode, Jace said. Once we'd climbed the small hill and the town's streetlights were far enough away that the only light came from the sky, the thin slice of moon, and the jittery white circles our phones threw underfoot. He held up his phone showing the little plane icon. It made me think of all the times I'd put that setting on before a flight. It made me feel safe in a way I didn't expect. Off the grid. Untouchable. It's 10:12, Lily said. We're doing this for almost 2 hours? We'll practice, Jace said, grinning. He always found the edge between fun and mean, and pretended it was a game board. We split up to find a good one. That's what we said, like we were shopping. It felt horrible the second it was out of my mouth. A good grave, a fun stranger, a story with letters you could read in the dark. The names you notice are the ones that rhyme with your name or look like someone you know. My sister's name is Emily, so I saw every M and thought of her. Harper kept showing us stones with H names like he was flagging a hotel room at a beach resort. Lily, who is careful around everything, chose a stone with flowers on it. An older woman, the years spaced far enough apart to look like a life rather than a tragedy. Okay, Jace said when we'd all settled. Rules: set your phones to airplane mode. Put the phone on the stone. Step back 10 steps. Don't look away. If it rings at midnight, you answer and say your full name and say you're listening. You have to let them talk until they're done. No interrupting dead people. Who decides when they're done? Brenna asked, folding her arms. Do they hang up? They say goodbye, Jace said. That's stupid, Lily said. It's not respectful. Respectful is us walking away now, Miguel said. Respectful is not filming, I added, and left mine recording anyway, because I wanted proof of how nothing would happen. We tested the step back 10 steps instruction. Try it sometime, in the dark, with your phone cast upward like a little face staring back. 10 steps turns into a distance that feels wrong, like leaving a child on a bench for a stranger to pick up. The circle of light around us kept sliding into shapes, hollowed by the grass and the slanted bases of other stones. I forced myself not to look at Ethan's spot on the far side of the hill. He'd been buried in the new section, I remembered from the funeral procession that had blocked traffic the day of his service. I didn't go. I watched from my car with the radio off. We wait, Jace said, theatrically checking his dead-to-the-world phone as if it had a second hand. We respect. We do not disrespect. Shut up, Brenna said. And he did. Which is another thing about that night I remember. Little pockets of silence like the place itself was absorbing us. We stood like that for, 10 minutes, 20. The November brand cold moved up my sleeves and made my hands ache around my elbows. The sound of traffic was distant and constant. A siren somewhere. A dog in one of the houses ringing the cemetery's edge barked and then stopped. The wind came and went. No owls, no coyotes, none of the nature noises people sprinkle into spooky stories. Just our breathing and the occasional shuffle of shoes on grass when someone lost count of their steps and remeasured. At 10:42, a phone rang. It took a full second for my brain to categorize the sound because none, had service. It was the old-fashioned default ring. Not my ring, not Lily's, not the Drake song Jace used just to be annoying. A clean, generic bell, bright and naked, as if a cordless phone from a kitchen countertop in the 90s had been left on a grave, and finally someone was calling. What the? Brenna said. And then it stopped. The sound didn't fade. It cut, and the silence that came back was thicker than the cold. Whose was that? Harper whispered. We turned our lights on the stones, and all those reflective little screens stared back at us. None were lit. No movement across the glass. Nothing to say. Hey, you're imagining this, and here's your explanation. It's a prank, Miguel said reflexively. Somebody's got a Bluetooth speaker. We panned the lights around. No one was anywhere. The hill behind us went down into the older part of the cemetery, the older stones smaller, leaning as if listening. If someone had wanted to mess with us, they'd picked the wrong moment because we were ready to catch them. But there was no one to catch. Jace laughed without humor. Okay, fair, he said to the dark. Fair joke. And then another phone rang. This time, we all saw which one lit. It was Lily's. We could see the white glow from her lock screen, and the way the light made her flowers look like they were blooming. "Don't move," she said, because she didn't want anyone else stepping on the grave, and because she'd never say it, but because she didn't want to go alone. She counted her steps back to the stone like she was tracing a path across ice. At the 9th step, her foot slid against the lip of the base, and she caught herself with a whisper of breath that sounded too loud. She leaned over the phone and looked down. Her face changed the way faces do in horror movies when actors are trying to show you something you can't see. But it wasn't that. It was small. It was a crease between her eyes and a twitch at the corners of her mouth. It's a number," she said, and picked it up. She turned the screen to show us, and the number at the top was Ethan Rhodes, with the small gray photo next to it. The meme he'd made of his own face, stretched long and stupid with the caption Mondays. "Answer it," Jace said, instantly, like an audience member in his own dare. Lily didn't. She looked at me first. We were 10 months into us, and the thing we'd learned was that we checked in with our eyes before we did anything. I wanted to say, "Don't." I wanted to say, "This is some idiot spoofing his number, and we don't owe them the satisfaction." But even that logic had a crack down the middle. What idiot was standing in the dark with a spoofing app and a perfect sense of our timing and nothing better to do on Halloween than watch 6 kids fail at scaring themselves? My mouth made a shape and no sound came out. She took that as permission and swiped. "Hello?" she said. "Ethan?" There was air on the other side of the line. Not static. Not the underwater sound you get when you pick up a call in a basement. Air. And then a voice that was not Ethan's and not a stranger's and not anything I can describe without you deciding I'm making it up. It was her voice, not a girl. Her voice. My girlfriend's voice saying, "Lily?" She jerked as if stung. "Who is this?" Her eyes went everywhere. Us, the other stones, the trees. "Lily," the voice said again, and this time it was crying. Not sobbing. Crying like relief turned inside out. "Lily, please, can you hear me?" She hung up. The sound that followed was the worst of the night. It wasn't a howl or a scream. It was a full minute of all of us breathing like we'd run sprints, lungs trying to get ahead of whatever we'd just refused to let in. "Someone's messing with us," Harper said, and for a second, I believed him the way you believe anyone who sounds like they know what they're doing. They recorded her. They used, what do you call it? Sample something. "No one recorded me," Lily said. Her voice had shrunk. It made me want to put my arms around her, but I felt as if hugging were a thing only daytime people did. "It's almost 11, Miguel said. He was the one who moved first, walking fast toward his stone as if finishing the assignment would make it stop. "Let's get our phones and go. It's juvenile. I feel like an idiot." He stepped in and reached for his phone. It wasn't there. His light went wide and then narrow, and he made a sound deep in his throat that I'd only ever heard on soccer fields when kids collided and something broke. "My phone," he said. "It's gone." "Maybe you took it back already," Brenna said, half joking, half pleading, because if it was a mistake, then none of this had to be anything we couldn't explain. "I didn't," he said, and then Lily gasped, and then Jace swore, because all at once, one by one, the stones glowed. Not with anything supernatural. With screens. Our phones were on other stones, 10, 20 feet away, each lit, each buzzing, each showing an incoming call from ourselves. Adam, Lily, Jace, Brenna, Miguel, Harper, all capital letters, the way your phone does when the contact is you. The circle empty of a photo because who takes a selfie for their own caller ID? The kind of thing you don't know your phone can do until it does it, and you have to decide if it's a bug or the end of the world. "Do not touch them," Miguel said, and I can still hear the lawyer he will probably never become in that sentence. "Do not touch anything." "Then what?" Jace said, and his bravado was peeling like cheap paint. "We leave our phones? We just What? Walk away? Yes, Miguel said, which tells you how scared he was. We walk away. We can't, Lily said. My mom. She stopped. We all had people who would call, who would think we were where we said we'd be, who would notice if the little circle on the Find My app froze in the middle of a patch of grass and never moved. It's a prank, Harper said, steadying himself with the word again. We take our phones and then we go. We'll laugh about it tomorrow. He moved first. He always did. He stepped toward the one with his name and reached down, and the moment his fingers touched the glass, all 6 phones stopped ringing and switched, at the exact same time, to FaceTime. No one hit accept. They just answered themselves. 6 tiny windows bloomed at once, 6 micro versions of us, jittering because hands were shaking as lights fell on faces. 6 little horrors. But that wasn't the horror. The horror was the 7th window. No matter which phone you looked at, there were 7 frames. 6 were us, in the moment, our pale faces and the sliding circles of light and the gleam of the stones. The 7th was also us, but not us right now. It was us standing in daylight. It was us standing in the same positions as the night us, only the ground around our ankles was torn up like fresh soil, and the stones behind us had names we recognized not as strangers, but as ours. Not full names, just the kind a small town puts on a stone when someone your age dies and they expect everyone to know who they mean. Adam, Lily, Jace, Brenna, Miguel, Harper. It could have been edited. I know how timelines work in apps. I know you can stitch clips and add filters and generate AI that imitates faces. But it wasn't edited because there was nothing to edit. There were no files. There wasn't even internet. I don't remember dropping my light, but I remember the sudden black and the feeling that something soft and enormous had been thrown over us. I heard someone stumble and someone else say no in a voice like a child's. I heard Lily's breaths counting themselves because that's how she calms down when a panic attack starts. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. Run, I said. And I don't know if I said it or thought it or prayed it. Bodies moved. Shoes tore at grass. We scattered without a plan, the way birds do when a cat steps into the yard. I ran downhill because gravity picked for me. Greenwood at night is small, and then it isn't. The loop road is easy to follow, and then it's not. The chain-link fence is a border, and then it turns your breath into a sound you can't stand. I found the road and followed it. Light back on, breath like broken glass in my throat, ribs hot against the cold. Halfway to the gate, I stopped and made the mistake of looking back. The hill was full of light, not like a movie cemetery. No blue glow, no fog. Phone light. White, shaky circles and the small square screen lights near the ground where you'd put a phone if you wanted it to look at a name. I couldn't see my friends. I saw movement that could have been them or could have been the wind rearranging shadows. I heard my name the way you hear your name at crowded parties, once, twice, 100 times, from directions that don't add up. Something about that broke the part of me that wanted to make sure everyone was okay. I ran for the gate and out of it and down the block to where our cars sat under a streetlight like they belonged to someone else. I got into mine and locked the doors and put my head on the steering wheel and tried to breathe like Lily does. 4, hold, 4. My mouth tasted like pennies. I was there 5 minutes. 10. Time has a way of lying to you on nights like that. I called Lily. It went straight to voicemail because her phone was on airplane mode. I called Jace. His phone was on airplane mode. Brenna, airplane mode. Harper, airplane mode. Miguel, airplane mode. I got out. I left the car door open like that would make it faster to leave and ran back toward the gate because leaving people behind is a nightmare I haven't shaken since childhood. I reached the sign that says closed at 11 p.m. The gate was chained. The chain hadn't been there when we went in. I know because I held the gate open for everyone with my elbow. It hung now with that heavy, lazy look chains get when they know you can't argue with them. The lock was big enough to be a joke. Hey, I yelled, and my voice sounded wrong. Hey, Lily! Jace! You know those moments when your brain gives up pretending and lets your body feel what it already knows? This was that. It felt like the opposite of getting caught, like recognizing there wasn't anything in there to catch. Like the world was two circles now, inside the fence and outside, and I was on the wrong side to be useful. A car slowed. A man leaned out and frowned and asked if I was okay. I said yes and heard the word not match my face, because he parked and got out and stood a little distance away, like people do when they think you're in a fight with someone, and they want to be ready to say they saw something later. "My friends," I said. "My friends are inside. We were—" He nodded the way older men nod when they disapprove of your choices but don't want to ruin the one chance they have to be kind. "I'll call," he said. And the relief that word sent through me made me dizzy. He meant the police. He meant authority. He meant adults. It was 11:28 p.m. when the first cruiser rolled up and then another. I told the story badly. I told it like I was trying to be innocent. I said we'd gone in for a dare and lost track of time, and the gate had been open when we got there, and now it wasn't, and our phones were— I didn't finish that sentence because there wasn't a way to finish it that sounded like a person you'd take seriously. The officer with the clipboard— yes, a clipboard, I think to make it feel official even as he was already annoyed with us— called someone who had the key. He was a groundskeeper named Warren who had a coat over pajama pants. He looked at me like you look at a kid who's stolen from your store and says he hasn't. "Whatever you left," he said, "whatever you did, we're not making a federal case of it tonight. You go in, you get your things, and we all go home." "That's fine," the officer said. "We'll accompany." We walked back in under streetlight and flashlight and adult confidence, and I thought that was the only thing we had to do. Bring someone who belongs to night places. Bring someone who knows where the Locks live. The hill looked like the hill. The lights were gone. The wind had paused. I could hear a highway that hadn't been there before, or maybe I could always hear it and hadn't been listening. We climbed in a slow cluster, the men talking in low voices about vandalism and how kids, these days, have no respect for resting places. We found the first phone on a stone I hadn't noticed earlier. It was mine. The screen was dark. The airplane icon stared in the corner like a joke with bad timing. It should have been cold, but when I picked it up, it was warm the way screens are warm when you've been on a long FaceTime. "Don't touch anything else," the officer said. "Your phone fine, but don't disturb property." The second phone was Lily's. It lay face up on the stone with flowers she'd chosen, as if it had never moved. The lock screen had a missed call. The missed call was Lily. The timestamp was 11:01 p.m. We found Harper's, Miguel's, Jace's, Brenna's. The arrangement looked intentional, but maybe any arrangement looks intentional when you're the one seeing it. They were all on airplane mode. All had the same missed call. All had one more thing I didn't want to see. I looked anyway. In the photos, there were 6 new images per phone. Not edited, not AI. Not a montage. Just 6 images, blurry and too close, like someone had been holding the phone at chest level and shooting without looking. The first was the ground. The second was a shoe. The third was a stone too near to know the name. The fourth was a face I didn't recognize. A smear of forehead and hair, and a shadow where a nose might be. The fifth was the sky. The sixth was a black rectangle that could have been anything. "Kids," Warren said softly. The way he said it was not unkind. It made me think of the word elegy. "Where are your friends?" the officer asked, and this time I didn't have any version of an answer. We searched until 1 a.m. The officers called in 2 more cars and a K9 unit. The dog did the dog thing and found nothing because what was there to find? The cemetery isn't that big. The fence is continuous and the gates are the only gaps. Between 12:05 and 12:20, my phone vibrated on airplane mode. You can argue with me about that if you want. You can say it was a phantom vibration, the way people feel their phones buzz when they don't. I know what I felt. It wasn't in my pocket, it was in my hand. I looked down, and the screen was still. I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to go home and because sometimes the only power you have left is the choice not to make a sound where there doesn't need to be one. By 2 a.m., the cemetery was taped off like a movie. They took statements. They called parents. Some came and stared at me like I was the one who'd said the word midnight. Lily's mom arrived and hugged me so hard it hurt, and then looked around and said, "Where's Lily? Where is she?" Like the world had misplaced her instead of us. Sunrise in a cemetery is the opposite of comforting. The stones sharpen, the names become sentences, the flowers stop being colors and turn back into plastic. They sent me home at 4 with a promise to call and questions they'd ask later when I'd had some rest. I lay in bed and watched the squares of light on my ceiling change shape and waited for my phone to make any sound at all. At 7:03 a.m., I got a text from a number that didn't belong to any carrier. No area code, 7 digits, like phones used to be. Lily. "Did you hear me?" I typed and erased and typed again. "Where are you?" I sent it, and the bubble sat there without flipping to delivered. I stared until my eyes watered. I waited for the bubble with 3 dots that would say she was writing back. It didn't come. The message vanished like it had never been there. It's been a year. I don't go to Greenwood. I don't go anywhere at night that trees border on 3 sides. The official story is missing persons. The unofficial one is the same, only with more whispers. I went to the hardware store once and walked past the photo of Ethan, and someone had taken it down. When I asked, the cashier said his mom asked them to. Too many kids were making a thing out of it, she said, and I couldn't decide if that meant us. On Halloween, at 11:59 p.m., my phone lights up with 6 notifications. Nothing from any app I use. No badge. Just 6 white cards stacked like a deck that slides down and disappears before I can grab one. If I'm alone, I say my full name out loud. I don't know if that helps. I switch to airplane mode and put my phone screen down on the table and take 10 steps back. I try not to blink. I try not to listen. I try not to answer. I try not to make it worse than it already is. If this is a prank, if someone is sociopathic enough to build an entire system around making a group of kids think they pulled something out of the dark that wasn't there to begin with, then I guess the joke landed. If it's not a prank, then I did the thing I promised myself I wouldn't do when I started writing this, which is tell you a ghost story. But I wasn't scared because something glowed, or because blood ran uphill, or because a shape turned into a man. I was scared because my girlfriend said my name in her own voice from the wrong side of a phone call, and I answered nothing. I was scared because the thing that reached for us used technology and timing and a rule set we thought we controlled, and it used our names the way you use a key. If you go to Greenwood this Halloween, if you go anywhere and think it'll be funny to put your phone on a stone and count 10 steps and dare your nerves to do what they always do, remember what the dare really is. It's not stay until midnight. It's not don't flinch. It's do you pick up when you hear yourself asking for help? I didn't. I'm still listening. I never liked dares. Even when we were kids and the worst consequence was grass stains or a scraped knee, I hated the feeling of other people watching and waiting for you to prove you weren't scared. It always felt like a trap. You either did something stupid or you got called a coward. But when it's Halloween and you're 17 and your best friend says 30 minutes, that's all. You find yourself agreeing to things you know you'll replay later in the dark. We weren't the kind of kids who drank or snuck into parties. We were the kind who drove around town and tried on different lives in drive-through windows. That night it was me, Noah, my cousin Theo, our neighbor Jess, her friend Rowan, and a girl named Kira who'd been orbiting our friend group since August. 5 people, 2 cars, the windows down because it smelled like leaves and distant bonfires, and that particular cold you only get at the end of October when fall remembers it's supposed to be a little dangerous. The dare was Jess's. 30 minutes in Greenwood, she said, like we were ordering fries. Leave your flashlight on. No turning it off. No pointing it at your own face to make TikToks. Just stand there. See how long you last. Theo laughed the way he does when he wants to pretend he isn't nervous. I'll be bored. he said. That place is like a park with rocks. It's not about ghosts, Jess said, flicking her blinker even though the road was empty. It's about having to stay. You know how people always say they do great in horror movies? This is the opposite. You just have to not leave. Rowan, who is quiet until she's not, said, "And if someone comes to kick us out?" "We're not breaking in," Jess said. "It's a loop road. We'll park on the street. We're not climbing anything. We'll be respectful." Kira didn't say anything for a while. She turned her face toward the window and watched the houses go by. All those lit pumpkins and fake cobwebs and little kids wobbling under two big costumes. When she finally spoke, it surprised me because I'd almost forgotten she was there. 30 minutes, she said. "We all do it?" "We take turns," Jess said. 2 at a time. The others wait by the gate. "I'll go last," Theo said, and I knew he was calculating. If he went last, we might get bored or cold and bail early. "I'll go first," I said, because coward was already forming in someone's mouth, and I hated it more than the dark. Greenwood sat where it always sat, the chain-link fence and the hill and the sign that made a rule out of a courtesy. Closed at 11 p.m. We parked on the street. The houses around the edge of the cemetery had their porch lights on, candy bowls ready. You could hear laughter if you stood still. The wind was the kind that took heat out of your clothes and didn't give anything back. We went in together and walked up the small hill to where the stones were newer and spaced like teeth. "No filming," Jess said. "We're not those kids." Theo saluted with his phone anyway and then pocketed it. "Timers," he said. "We should sync them." "No," Rowan said. "It's better if it's just us in time. No beeps." Kira stopped. "Just to be clear," she said softly. "If I say I'm done, I'm done." "Of course," Jess said too quickly. "This isn't the Marines." We picked a spot that felt like a compromise. Far enough from the road that car headlights wouldn't make everything look like a cheap haunted house. Close enough that we wouldn't have to pretend we weren't thinking about getting back to the gate. There was a column of 3 stones to our left, small and squared like they'd been cut from the same block, and a tree with most of its leaves gone. Someone had tied a ribbon on one of the branches, and it clicked against the bark like a loose tooth. "I'll go with you," Jess said to me. 2 people's easier than 1 if someone shows up. "Or if you faint," Theo said, and I didn't bother pointing out that fainting wasn't really my brand. He needed to say it. He needed me to be the one who might not make it. Rowan set the rules again in a whisper, as if the place had asked her to. We pick a spot. We don't move from it. We keep our lights on. We don't talk. 30 minutes. "And we don't call each other names if someone taps out at 10, Kira said. "Right," Jess said. "And if a groundskeeper comes, we smile and apologize and leave." She and I walked 10 paces from the others and picked our places without thinking too hard. That was key. If you think too hard, you start cataloging names and ages and the way someone went from one set of numbers to another, and it becomes impossible to stand over that information and pretend you're just resting somewhere. I stopped near a stone with a last name only, Murphy, and 2 dates close together, husband and wife. The years said old. The gap said one followed the other quickly. Jess chose a stone 3 feet away. I didn't read it. My light was angled down in a polite V so it didn't beam across the grass into anyone's eyes. "Ready?" Jess said. "No," I said, and she nudged my wrist with her knuckles, and we stood. I expected those 30 minutes to be loud in my head. I expected my brain to count or narrate or make lists. Instead, my thoughts tightened into a single thread. Hold still. Breathe slow. Don't look behind you. It wasn't terror. It was containment. Like trying to keep water level in a glass while someone walked by and jostled your elbow every few seconds. Outside the fence, a motorcycle went by. Leaves scraped each other. I could hear the small noises the cemetery makes when no one is listening, ticks and tiny thumps that have ordinary explanations during the day and become something else at night. Jess didn't talk. I didn't talk. That felt like a win. Somewhere toward the far end of the hill, a light moved. My shoulders tightened before I knew I'd seen it. I didn't turn. The rule had been clear. We don't move. The light slid parallel to us, a pale circle wobbly like someone who wasn't used to walking on grass. Then another light joined it, more steady. I heard the soft sound of a laugh, cut short. Our friends. Good. No groundskeeper, no one to ask us to leave. Minutes passed. The air constricted the way cold air does when you try to breathe too deeply. The stars looked like grounded pixels. I thought about the way my mom says, text when you're headed back, and the way I always do because I like the moment when her dot bubbles and she sends a heart. Jess made a noise like the swallow you make before a speech. "How long?" she breathed. "Don't," I said, and she nodded, small and quick, and we went back to being furniture with lungs. When the rustle came, it wasn't from where I expected. Not behind us, not from the tree, from the ground. It sounded like someone dragging a finger through dry dirt, a soft line, then another, 10 inches long maybe. My brain gave me facts to keep me from giving in to the urge to aim my light down and see. It could be a worm. It could be a mouse. It could be a twig dislodging and scratching past a stone. It could be any number of things that existed long before we decided to dare them. I didn't move. The scratch came again, closer to my shoes. I pictured the sole of my sneaker as an island. If I didn't lift it, I could pretend nothing was asking me to. Jess inhaled sharply, not the how long breath. A different one. I didn't look at her. I didn't want to see her eyes doing what mine were doing. I started counting. Not numbers, breaths. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. I tried to make each set more even than the last. It worked long enough to get me to the first finger numbness, that sizzle you get when your body decides to reroute heat from the extremities. The scratch stopped. The stillness after it was a relief so bright it made me lightheaded. Then somebody whispered, "Noah." It was close, a foot away, right gutter of my hearing. So close I almost turned as if someone had leaned in to confide a joke. I didn't move. Theo has the kind of voice that still has childhood in it. This wasn't Theo. Rowan sounds like a singer when she's tired. This wasn't Rowan. It wasn't Jess. It wasn't Kira. It was familiar in the way every name you've ever been called is familiar when you're trying not to imagine your own after the word "here lies." The whisper came again, softer. "Noah." My throat went dry so fast I almost coughed. I swallowed hard and felt the swallow the whole way down. Beside me, Jess shifted her weight by a millimeter, the sound of cloth finding a new set of creases. The whisper didn't come again. Instead, the ground gave a tiny sigh, like a bag letting out air, and then the smell hit us. Not rot, nothing movie dramatic. It was the smell of earth turned over where it shouldn't be at night, dense and damp and startling. The smell you get when you dig for a new sapling and hit soil that hasn't seen daylight in a while. 5 more minutes, Jess whispered, and I wanted to hate her for guessing, for measuring, for making it finite. But the number steadied me. 5. I could do 5. I did not look down until the 4th minute. I know, because the moment I broke my own rule, the world tilted. I told myself I wasn't really looking down. I was adjusting my phone, that was all. I was just checking the battery or the angle, something small and harmless, something that wouldn't change anything. The cone of light moved a fraction. It lit my shoes, it lit the grass. It lit a line in the earth that hadn't been there 10 minutes before. A line like a child's drawing, but too straight. A line exactly where the whisper had been. It curved toward my toes and then cut away as if deciding against me. "Okay," Jess said, but it wasn't a word. It was her exhale making shapes. "Time," I said, equally shapeless. We broke together, like people breaking surface after holding their breath. We walked, not ran, not stumbled, walked, back toward the gate. The light that had been from our other group bobbed ahead and then stilled. Shadows resolved into Rowan and Kira, close together, heads turned toward the far side of the hill. "Where's Theo?" Jess asked, and Rowan shook her head. "He went to hide," Kira said. "He said he wanted to jump out at you when you finished. He said it 5 minutes after you left. He went over there." She pointed toward the older section, the stones smaller and closer, the ground uneven. "He wouldn't," I said, and then had to correct myself because yes, he would. That was Theo's brand. Make it a little worse, then make it funny. "He'll be back in a minute," Rowan said, but she didn't sound like she believed it. "Okay," Jess said, clapping her hands once in a way that made the cold fold around us again. "Then it's their turn. You too?" She nodded at Rowan and Kira. "Take the spots we used. Noah and I will wait here for Theo. We'll text if—" She stopped. The rule had been no phones for filming. Not no phones at all. But pulling out a phone felt like admitting something had shifted, like breaking a seal. "We'll shout," I said. Rowan and Kira looked at each other and then did the brave thing. They walked to our spots and set their lights. Rowan squared her shoulders and Kira lifted her chin, and I felt a rush of useless love for all of us. Because we were kids in a field pretending we could hold a line against whatever this was. 5 minutes passed. 10. Jess and I stood by the gate. I didn't want to measure distance to the older stones, but I knew where Theo went. My skin knew. 15, Jess said finally. Enough. We called his name. We did the casual version first. The dude, okay, good one version. Then the bigger one, the Theo, that goes looking for a dog who slipped his collar. The sound sucked itself into the empty spaces and didn't come back different. "Stay," I told Rowan and Kira. "Don't move." They looked as if I'd asked them to keep breathing underwater. I ran with Jess toward the slope. We didn't have to go far. There was a cluster of stones near a low, tilted one with an oval inset portrait, the old kind, sepia, a young man in an old suit. Before that stone, on the ground, Theo's light lay shining straight up, making the branches above look like the rib cage of a giant thing. "Theo?" Jess said, and when she said it, it sounded like a prayer and a curse. No answer. The beam lit the undersides of our hands when we reached down. I picked it up and the world changed because shadows obeyed me again. The circle cut a shape across the grass. Scuffle marks. Not dramatic. Not dragged feet. The little haphazard crescents you get when someone is backing up, fast, trying to keep their balance. We followed the marks. A few feet, 6, 9. They ended at a narrow dip in the ground that wasn't a hole, not really. Not something you'd fall into. It looked like the ground had been depressed by weight long ago and then tided over with grass, a sag the size of a person. "Theo?" I tried again, loud enough that Rowan and Kira turned their heads, disobeying me by reflex. My phone rang. I jumped so hard that my palm slammed the light into my knee. My phone wasn't supposed to ring. It was in my pocket, yes, but it was on silent. It was always on silent. I fumbled it out and looked at the screen. It said Theo. His contact photo flashed, one of those terrible middle school pictures my aunt loves. I swiped and put it to my ear. "Theo?" I said. "Where are you? Stop." Static. No breath. The sound of someone trying not to breathe loudly. The sound of someone holding a phone and not wanting whoever is near them to know it. Then, faint and stretched thin. "Noah?" "I'm here," I said. "Where are you? Say something loud. Knock on something." He stopped. I heard the phone shift. The distinct sound of something soft being brushed, like cloth over wood. Then, close to the microphone, what I swear was his whisper. "Don't!" The call cut. "Where is he?" Jess asked, eyes wide. I called back. It went straight to voicemail. I hung up and called again. Straight to voicemail. I put the phone on speaker and texted instead because it felt like doing something. "Where are you?" The green bubble slid and sat without changing to delivered. Then, from the dip in the ground, faint as a wristwatch under a pillow, came the sound of a phone vibrating. Jess and I looked at each other the way people in movies look at each other when they realize the monster has been in the room the whole time. We knelt at the same moment, knees in damp grass, my jeans darkening instantly until the cold seeped in. I put my hand to the earth and felt nothing through fabric except the fact of pressure. Jess flattened her palm, then put her ear down. "It's his," she said. "I can hear it." "How?" I whispered, as if we needed to be quiet for it to keep happening. "How is it under?" She didn't answer because there wasn't anything to say that wouldn't change the ground into a puzzle piece of a larger picture I didn't want to see. We dug. I know how that sounds. Stupid, disrespectful, the exact opposite of the kid we thought we were when we walked in with our rule about being respectful. We didn't think. We used our hands and then our keys. The earth was shallow there, the grass rooting into loose soil that broke when you asked it to. We scraped and scooped, our fingers clumsy, our breath turning white in front of us. A foot down, my fingertips brushed something solid and slick. "Phone," I said, and we both made the low sound you make when you spot the finish line. It was Theo's phone. My aunt had made him put a bright orange case on it after he left it in the fridge once. You couldn't mistake it. I pulled, and the dirt held on for a second, sucking at the edges of the case, and then let go with a soft pop. The phone vibrated in my hand, not from a call, just that nervous tremor devices have when they've been held too long. It lit my wrist bones in the glow. There was a text notification. "Don't." No capitalization, no apostrophe. Then another, arriving as I watched. Letters climbing the screen. "Don't dig, I dropped it." Not in fear, in refusal, like a hot pan you've been told to trust. Jess picked it up and stared at the words as if she could make them unwrite themselves. "Is this you?" she said to the ground, to Theo, to whoever had found his thumb and pressed it into the shape of us. She texted back, "Where are you?" The dots didn't appear. The phone went dark, and I felt relief so strong it made me guilty. She thumbed it awake again. It opened to the camera app. The screen was black the way cameras show black when they're covered by something. Then the image rolled like an eye-opening after sleep. Grain. Dark. The phone was filming its own pocket. And then, for a heartbeat that made everything else go quiet, a small oblong shape crossed the frame in the exact place where a phone screen would reflect a face. Not a face. A lighter rectangle, like a mouth. It opened and closed. Not like lips, like a fold of soft earth shifting and settling. Jess hissed air between her teeth and clicked the screen off like it would make us less visible. "We need to get them," she said, and jerked her head at Rowan and Kira, who had stayed in their places because they are better than I am. "We need to leave." "How?" I asked, stupidly, because the answers were obvious and none of them felt like answers. "Now," she said, getting up too fast, her knees muddy, her hair catching on the brittle edge of a weed. We ran the good run this time. No pretense of walking. The two lights by our original spot swung and rushed toward us, and I realized with a shock of relief how beautiful ordinary fear is when it's shared. "Time," Kira said, as if this were still a game. "We're leaving," Jess said. "Theo's—" She stopped herself. She didn't say gone. She didn't say missing. She said nothing, which was smarter than anything I was going to say. We made it to the gate. It was open. I had expected a locked chain. Maybe I wanted one, because a problem like that has steps. Find someone, get a key, return. Instead, the path to the street was there. No barrier, the world beyond the fence bright with porch lights and normal hours. We stepped out together. Kira put her hand on my arm as if to count us. 1, 2, 3, 4. She didn't say 5. No one said 5. We didn't call the police immediately, which I still think about. We stood there in a clot near Jess's car and argued breathlessly in low voices, because the houses were close and there were children walking by, and it felt obscene to say "under" in front of anyone whose hands were full of candy bags. We weren't good in that moment. We were cowards and also kids who wanted someone older to fix it. Finally, Jess said, "I'm calling." And that was that. They came. Of course they did. Lights that made the fence flash like silver, voices with radios in them, a groundskeeper who sleepwalked his way to the lock even though the gate didn't need a key. They asked us to show them. We did, and we were careful not to touch the place again. We pointed like witnesses at a crime scene and tried to hold our hands still. They found the dip. They found disturbed earth. They found Theo's phone. Because I had put it back down on the ground like an offering or a refusal, I can't tell which. They did not find Theo. Dogs sniffed and turned and lay down, uninterested, like the scent was everywhere and nowhere. Men in uniforms moved like they had a manual. They asked us to sit in the back of the cruiser to warm up. We drank water we didn't want. Our parents arrived and tried to be the kinds of parents they thought would be useful. My mom's hands shook while she smoothed my hair back from my forehead, a thing she hasn't done since I was 10. "Tell me again," she said, and I did, and I heard how it sounded coming out of my mouth. At 3 a.m., an officer with careful eyes asked me to unlock Theo's phone because I was the last contact. It didn't have Face ID, thank God for my aunt's suspicion of fancy things, but it had a passcode. We all knew it. Theo used my birthday for everything because he said no one would guess it. I entered it and felt like I was crossing a line I couldn't recross. The Messages app was open to a thread with my name at the top. The last thing sent was "Don't dig." The timestamp said 12:11 a.m. There were other messages older than that. Memes, a photo of a burger, a link to a playlist he made called "Runs When the Sky Looks Like a Bruise." None of the messages said, "I'm under the ground." Because why would a phone do that for you when it could do something worse? They kept us until dawn, and then someone made the decision that always feels impossible in movies and turns out to be what real life makes you do. Go home, warm up, don't leave your phones on, don't go anywhere alone. They would be in touch. They would have units out there. Theo's mom hugged me so hard I thought my ribs would bend. She kept saying his name and then "my boy," like a refrain. When I told her about the call, her eyes did a thing I will dream about for years. They went wide and then small, like a camera adjusting to light. "He hates being under blankets," she said, and I almost laughed because it was the truest thing I'd heard all night and useless. At 7:08 a.m., my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown number. The transcription couldn't pick it up. It said, "Inaudible." I put the phone to my ear and listened to a minute of air and a sound like a fingertip stroking fabric. At the very end, a whisper, "Don't." And then something that could have been a name, or could have been the soft collapse of soil against itself. It's been months. Theo is a missing person that our town pretends to still be looking for, while also making the space around his name that people make when they are practicing a different tense. I sometimes think about that first scratch. That line near my shoe that wasn't a message or a threat or a prophecy. It was just a mark made by something that used to be a person, or by time, or by a trick of settling earth. If you're waiting for me to tell you we went back and dug 6 feet and found a tunnel or a coffin, you're waiting for a different story. We didn't. We couldn't. The cemetery is full of things we're not allowed to break. On Halloween now, I get texts from classmates who want to know the real story. I don't answer. I walk past the fence during daylight and count the leaves and say hello to names I didn't notice before. Sometimes, if I'm alone, I put my palm flat against the chain link and wait. I used to wait for a vibration from the metal, or a cold spot, or any of the things the internet says will make you feel like you got your friend back for a second. Now I wait to see if I can be the kind of person who doesn't do dares anymore. The rule shouldn't have been 30 minutes. It shouldn't have been, "Don't move." The rule should have been, if someone disappears to make it funnier, you don't make it funnier with them. You go get them. You don't let a field ask you to prove anything. If you stand very still at night and listen to the ground, sometimes you hear your own blood. Sometimes you hear your name, which is its own kind of dare. If you go to Greenwood, if you go anywhere to be brave for half an hour, keep your light pointed down and your promises pointed up. And if your phone vibrates from under the grass, I don't have advice that won't sound like superstition or betrayal. I only have this, the last thing Theo said, if he said it, if it was him, if any of this still belongs to us, was don't, not help, not hurry, not I'm here, don't. And I didn't. I didn't dig deeper. I didn't go back the next night. I didn't answer unknown numbers that wanted me to. I don't know what that makes me. I know how soil tastes under your fingernails after you've washed your hands twice, and thought that would be enough. Sometimes my phone lights up with his name and then doesn't. Sometimes I wake to dirt under my tongue and the certainty that I left someone under something he couldn't stand. I don't have a moral. I have a map drawn in my head to a dip in the ground and a text I wish I'd never read even as I keep reading it. If a dare is just a line drawn for you to cross, then mine is this: don't. I didn't want to go to the cemetery. I said it twice in the group chat and once in the driveway while Eli loaded a folding table into the trunk. Nobody heard me because no one ever hears the quiet kid say no when it sounds like yes would be more fun. Think of the aesthetic, Rowan said, leaning into my open window so her glitter fell onto my hoodie. Candles, fog, vintage gravestones. Our feed needs this. It's not fog, Eli said. It's my vape. Don't be disrespectful. We're taking trash bags. Maya chimed in, already in her witch hat. We'll leave it cleaner than we found it. We're the good kids. We're the kids who don't get invited to the football captain's barn party, Eli said. So we make our own. I could have said we didn't need a party after marching band and 3 hours of standing still on a field, pretending the wind was part of the show. I could have said my mom's voice in my head had already told me not to go anywhere that had a fence and a sign after dark. Instead, I said nothing, because in our group, silence reads as complicity. There were 7 of us: me, Nora, my cousin Eli, his girlfriend Maya, Rowan, my neighbor since we were 10, Javi and Liv, who came as a pair since sophomore year, and B, who was new to town and trying to figure out who everyone was by trial and error. We had a Bluetooth speaker, a bag of tea lights, a plastic tablecloth with tiny skulls, and 2 6-packs that someone's brother had forgotten in the fridge. Greenwood isn't dramatic. It's flat and municipal and mostly stones that look like teeth. The older section is on the far side where the ground dips and someone planted trees too closely together 50 years ago. There's a loop road and a chain-link fence, and a sign that says closed at 11 p.m. as if that's a moral instead of a rule. The gate never has a lock until it does. We parked on the street like we were normal people taking a walk, and when we carried the stuff up the little hill, we did it like a picnic. Because if you do something wrong with enough confidence, you can feel it blur into something almost okay. Maya spread the tablecloth on the grass and set her candles around the perimeter like a stage manager marking exits. Rowan made a circle out of battery-operated ones and declared it sacred space. Eli put the speaker on the lowest volume and found a playlist called October Bones. Javi opened the beers and handed them out with the reverence of a communion server, even to me. I took one and didn't drink it. There were houses along the edge of the property. A dog barked and a porch light clicked on. I watched the windows because I like to know which lights watch back. In the house on the corner, a TV flickered blue and then white, then black. Someone walked behind a curtain. The wind moved the curtain when they weren't there. Okay, B said, hands on hips. What's the plan? We can't just sit here like we're in a horror movie waiting for a man with a mask to invent us. We play a game, Rowan said, and smiled the smile I've seen get her out of detentions and into cast lists. I got it from my aunt. When she was in drama school, they used to walk around the churchyard and pick a name and improv a backstory. Death exercises. It's supposed to make you respect the narrative of a life. Respect, Eli repeated. Right. It's not disrespectful if you do it in good faith, Rowan added quickly. You say the name and you say something kind about how they lived, not just how they died. You make them real. Are we summoning? Maya asked, amused. Is this summoning adjacent? No, Rowan said. This is writing adjacent. She looked at me when she said it, like a private joke. I help out at the library and I volunteer with the Historical Society. One summer I helped catalog stones for a project that uploaded inscriptions to a database. I know how cold granite holds heat. I know how light across a carved surface can make letters vanish if you stand at the wrong angle. I'll go first, Javi said. Quick. Maybe so none of us could overthink it. He pointed his phone light at a stone near his knee. It just said Keating with 2 smaller lines underneath. James, 1953-2018, and Edith, 1955-2019. Keatings, he said softly, like he was stepping into a kitchen. James did everybody's taxes for 30 years and had a drawer of jelly beans for the neighborhood kids. Edith kept a notebook of people's favorite pies and made extra at Thanksgiving for the widowers who didn't have anyone to bake for them. That's sweet, Liv said, touching his ankle with her foot. Javi and I are going to be insufferable even when we're dead. My turn, Maya said, and moved her light in an arc. She found a smaller stone tilted like a ship. David Martin, 1980-2005, she read. He had a motorcycle he never told his mom about, and he proposed on a Ferris wheel, and he died for something he wasn't sorry he believed in. Americana, Eli said. You're going to make me cry. We went around the circle one by one, looking at names and making lives. It was good. It was maybe the best thing we've ever done, which is a terrible sentence to think about later. Bay made us laugh by giving old Mrs. Abernathy a secret career in pro wrestling as the Granite Widow. Liv made us quiet by saying a name like a prayer. Rowan's eyes did that light change thing they do when she's writing in her head. I was last, because I was stalling. I was thinking about the rubbings we'd made for the project that summer, the way we taped thin paper to the stone and ran charcoal softly over the surface, and the letters came up like bones under skin. I'd read every inscription with my fingertips. I knew which stones were marble, and which had mica that would blind you in morning sun. I picked a stone at the edge of our circle because it was big enough that whoever it belonged to had been loved. Clara Louise Davenport, 1931-1999, I read. She taught elementary school for 40 years and kept every note kids wrote her, and when she died, her nieces found them in shoeboxes in her closet and read them out loud to each other until 3 in the morning. That's very Nora, Rowan said, which is a nice way to say I make everything into a classroom. We were quiet for a minute, which is the thing I'll never forget. 7 kids, a speaker humming low, a ring of cheap candles, and a quiet more complete than any I've ever felt in a town that never really shuts up. We were good boys and girls then, accidental chapel. If we had stopped there, you wouldn't be reading this. Bea broke it. She didn't mean to. We should make it harder, she said. Not just who they were, how they died. No, I said quickly. Rowan's aunt. Rowan shrugged. We're making it up anyway. Nora, chill. It's a cemetery, I said, surprising myself with how sharp I sounded. It's not a writing prompt. Everything is a writing prompt, Eli said, not unkind. But we can be careful, like no car crash guesses, no guessing the thing that probably happened. Make it weird, so it's not cruel. I'm not trying to be cruel, Bea said. I like rules. Make some. No speaking ill, Maya offered. No curses. No, you deserved it. Nothing that makes us feel power over them. Say how they died, Rowan said. But make it about their life. Liv nodded, solemn. I can do that. We went around again. It was still fun at first. Javi said Mr. Keating died of old age in his armchair with a book on his chest, which felt like a spell you could live with. Maya gave David the motorcycle she'd already given him, but added that he pulled over to help someone change a tire and didn't see the car that hit him. Bea made me laugh again. Mrs. Abernathy, the Granite Widow, died when a ceiling fan fell on her at a PTA meeting, and everybody insisted on seeing it as ironic. When it got to Rowan, something shifted. She chose a stone at the edge of the candlelight. Lucille Hart, 1909-1970, she read, stepping a fraction closer so her light flattened across the letters. Lou, she said, like she knew her. Lou died in bed in August, window open, the smell of tomatoes coming in from the garden. her hair in rollers, an iced tea sweating on the nightstand. She woke halfway to say, "Tell Ruth not to overwater the basil," and then she slept. The house missed her for weeks, and the porch light burned out. It was good. It was too good. It made the space around her feel 1 degree warmer. Also, she added, almost as an afterthought, they never found her glasses. They're still somewhere in the house, with a breath mark on the left lens. Something else moved then. Not air, not light. The letters on the stone, I don't mean they shifted. I don't mean they rearranged like a screensaver. I mean that a thin, pale film lifted off the surface as if someone had placed tape there a long time ago and was peeling it back in slow motion. The line under Lucille's name, her dates, looked smudged. The number 1 in 1970 hazed and then clarified into a 3. "Okay," Eli said softly. "Okay." We all looked at Rowan because she was the one standing closest, and because for a stupid half-second I thought she'd done it as a trick, like a magician pulling a coin out from behind your ear. Her face was blank in the way faces go blank when they can't find the right expression in the drawer. "Did you?" Maya started, and cut herself off. "I didn't," Rowan said, and then, defensive, "It's my aunt's game, not my—" "Condensation," I said, too loud. "It's the angle of the light and the doodads in the stone in our eyes. Raking light can make letters you couldn't see appear and disappear. It's why charcoal rubbings work. If you hit it right, you can—" "Nora," Eli said gently, and reached to squeeze the back of my neck the way he does when he wants me to stop explaining. "Look." He angled his phone, moving the beam like a stage light, and the smudge didn't change. The numbers didn't blur. If anything, they came into more focus, the 3 crisping at the edges as if someone was writing under the skin of the stone itself. "Okay," Javi said, repeating Eli's, "okay," except this one sounded like someone changing gears. "Fun trick. Who set that up?" B looked delighted and offended at once. "If you thought I did this, I'd be bragging." "Maybe it's chalk," Liv suggested weakly. "Like how people make rubbings, but the reverse. You can fill the letters and rub off the extra." "Granite doesn't take chalk like that," I said. "It takes something else." I didn't want to say wax, because the tea lights were close enough to touch. We should have stopped. We should have laughed and decided it was moisture and moved our party to the soccer fields and forgotten to be interesting. Instead, Rowan, who never met a boundary she didn't think would be improved by moving it, turned to the next stone and read the name before I could say, "Please don't." "Joseph Joey, Melton, 1994-2012, she said. "Joey died in a river in June. It was his fault, and also no one's. He slipped, and his best friend tried to hold his hand and almost went in too, and they both dragged each other back to the bank, and that summer nobody swam there again because the water felt greedy." "Stop," I said. It sounded like a smaller word than it should have. On Joey's stone, under the chiseled dates, a thin line appeared like the path of a snail. It curved and resolved into an R, then an I. "Who's doing this?" Maya asked, voice sharp now, the humor gone. "Seriously." We looked at the world as if it would offer up a teenager with a bag of tricks and a YouTube channel called Make Your Own Cemetery Hauntings. There was no one. The houses stared back blankly. A car passed and didn't slow. The dog had stopped barking. "We're leaving," I said. And my voice had that strange authority people listen to because it sounds like an echo of someone older. "Pack up." "Wait," B said, and she was still curious, and that killed me. "One more. I want to try one." "B," Rowan warned, but she was smiling. "Be nice." B pointed her light at a stone that had an oval porcelain portrait inset. A woman in a dress from the 40s smiled back with that particular slant people used to wear in photos when they had to hold still too long. "Ruth Hart, 1911-1987. B read. "Lose Ruth. She died in the garden, on her knees by the tomatoes, dirt under her nails. She looked up and saw a crow watching, and she laughed because she'd always told Lou the crows were gossips. She said, 'Tell her I'm on my way,' and then she—" "Stop," I said again, but she didn't. And I don't know if she didn't hear me or if she thought that was part of it, the way we stop each other when reading something out loud because it's too good and we want to savor it. She put her hand on the dirt, and it was warm, and then, on Ruth Hart's stone, letters bloomed where there had been no letters. Not dates this time, not numbers, words. Shallow at first, and then deeper, like someone tracing over their own handwriting from the other side of the stone with a stylus only they could hold. They knew too much. It was childish, like something a kid would carve in a desk with a compass. It was also, as much as I hate to say it, beautiful. It had the rhythm of an old superstition. It had the shape of a warning that assumes it's too late. Eli swore softly, the sound undercut by panic. He grabbed the speaker and killed the music as if that would make it less real. "Pack up," he said again, this time to everyone. "Trash bags. Candles. Go." We moved fast and clumsy. In movies, teenagers drop everything and sprint. In life, you scoop wax cups into a torn plastic bag and curse when the bag catches on the hinge of a stone and sticks. Javi stuffed empties into his hoodie pocket. Liv clipped the power on the fairy lights with fingers that shook. I pulled the tablecloth and it dragged leaves and a small clump of dirt that smelled like the inside of a root cellar. "Rowan," I said, because she was standing still, watching the words on Ruth's stone shine in our light as if they were wet. "I didn't," she started, and then, smaller, Okay. We went downhill together. The gate was open. The houses looked like cardboard. Everything about them was wrong, like someone had turned them inside out. Eli walked backwards for a few steps, an instinct he has from too many horror movies. The chain-link fence made a pleasant little metallic thrumming when I knocked my hip into it, and the sound made my heart flip. On the street, things sorted themselves into normal shapes. The cars sat where we'd left them. A porch light flicked off in a way porch lights do when a timer gives up. Somewhere, a garage door opened and closed. We shoved everything into trunks and back seats and left. I didn't sleep. I sat on my bedroom floor with the lights on, knees under my chin, and watched my phone not buzz. At 2:14 a.m., I got a text from an unknown number, 7 digits only, old style, like the first story Noah told about Theo would later have, and deleted it without opening it because the subject line preview said they knew too, and I decided anything unsaid can't hurt you. That is not true. But I was 19 hours from finding that out. At 8:03 a.m., Rowan pounded on my front door. She looked wrong without makeup, like someone had erased her with too large a sponge. "Come," she said before my mom could say good morning. "You have to come." We walked to Greenwood because driving felt cowardly, and because if you make your feet do the work, it seems like you're earning the next part. The morning was bright, and the cold had the clean feel it never has at night. A man walked his terrier. 2 joggers in matching neon moved like gears. The cemetery looked like a catalog picture for a town that never had bad weather. We went straight to the place we'd been. I knew the path like a hand knows a banister. Bees were still asleep inside the flowers someone had left on the davenports. The ring of our candles was a scatter of little clear cups and wax circles like coins. No one had been here yet. We are not the kind of town where people visit graves on November 1st unless they feel guilty or Catholic. "Look," Rowan said, but I didn't have to. It was the kind of look you can feel from 10 feet away. The inscriptions were different. Not all of them. Not the names, because granite is stubborn and grief is permanent. But on 4 stones, the ones we talked about last, the ones that had been nearest our lights, the lower lines had changed. The dates were right. The little beloveds and husbands and devout mothers were as they were. But between dates and epitaphs, a thin, shallow line had been added on each. She left the window open. The water took and gave. Glasses missing. They knew too much. It wasn't carved. It wasn't etched with acid. It was... I stepped closer and touched the stone with one finger because this is what you do when you want to know what something is made of and you don't care if it bites. The letters were chalk soft, but not chalk. A powder that came off on my skin gray-white and glittered in the sun. It smelled faintly sweet, like the dust in the library stacks when you pull a book no one has touched in 40 years. Charcoal, I said, like the rubbings. Someone pressed paper and wrote on it, and the residue— Who? Rowan asked, voice small. Who did it? I was going to say us, because we were the ones who brought words and hung them on the air like banners and then walked away. I was going to say a kid with a prank and too much time. I was going to say the groundskeeper's bored nephew, because Warren, the groundskeeper, I've returned 3 sets of lost keys to him over the years, has a nephew who rides his bike to Greenwood in summer and eats Doritos under the elms. Someone who heard, I said instead, because none of our explanations felt big enough to cover the feeling in my chest. We wiped the words off with our sleeves because that felt like work we owed the world. The powder came away too easily. It smeared into streaks that made it worse. Rowan had a bottle of water in her backpack, and we dribbled some, and the letters blurred and then reappeared, as if any wetness would invite them back. We gave up and stood there, breath steaming, until Eli and Maya and the rest came uphill like a second thought. "Okay," Eli said when we pointed. "Okay." "Is this a crime?" Liv asked, and Javi said, "Everything's a crime if you do it on a grave," and put his hand in hers. Maya looked at me. "Do we tell someone?" "Warren," I said, and then he was behind us, as if the cemetery makes men in flannel appear when you think their names. He looked at the stones, at our hands, at the smears. He shook his head slowly. "Kids," he said, "every year." "Every year?" Rowan asked, relief and fear braided together. "They get ideas," he said. "They make little messages." He nudged the dirt near Ruth Hart's stone with the toe of his boot, and the powder there puffed like breath. "I clean it." "We'll help," I said, too quickly. He shook his head again. "Go home," he said, not unkindly. "Leave the dead alone." We did. We walked back to the gate, and the October morning felt like a different month. On the sidewalk, a woman in a coat pushed a stroller and waved at Warren because in small towns everyone waves at the man who takes care of things they don't like to think about. That afternoon, a post went up on our town's Facebook group. "Vandalism at Greenwood. Please tell your kids this isn't funny." The comments were what you think: outrage, nostalgia, someone blaming the high school for not having detentions anymore. There were pictures. In one of them, you could see my shoe in the corner. In another, you could see the line we had made with our candles as a pale ring of dead grass. Nobody tagged us because nobody knew it was us. That's the thing that sits in my stomach at night like a smooth rock. On Halloween now, after the little kids finish and the teenagers start walking in packs, the 7 of us text each other exactly once and then stop. It's not a ritual, it's a head count. Bay moved away in June. Rowan got into the theater program she wanted and left in August with a thrift store suitcase covered in stickers. Javi and Liv still post photos of coffee cups next to textbooks. The cups make me anxious in a way I can't explain. Eli and Maya broke up in the spring and pretended not to, like the ambient noise of our friend group could erase the way they stopped touching. Sometimes I go to Greenwood in daylight with the Historical Society, and I carry a clipboard and a roll of tape and a rectangle of charcoal wrapped in wax paper. I do the rubbings right. I document dates and symbols. I scrape moss gently from the grooves so newer hands can read names. If you tilt your head, you can still see where we wiped at the words on Ruth's stone. The graphite lives in the pores of the granite until rain pulls it deeper. I don't have a moral for you. People ask me at parties now if I believe in ghosts. I say no because it feels like a door that locks from the inside if you say yes. I say no because the scarier thing is when the living do something they can't take back and call it a game. I say no because if I say yes, I have to explain whose voice said they knew too much and whether I think it was a warning from under the earth or a joke some kid made with the patience to sit very still in the dark and listen to us make up fates. Here is what I know. If you say a name out loud in a place built for quiet, someone hears you. Maybe they're alive. Maybe they're not. Maybe it's just the part of you that wanted to be cruel in a pretty way. Maybe it's the part of the world that doesn't like being described. If you go to Greenwood this week, if you go anywhere and decide to play a game to make the night more interesting, make one more rule. Say how they lived. Say how they loved. Then leave their deaths alone. The stone doesn't need your story to stay put. You do. 2 nights after Halloween, I woke to the smell of tomatoes. It was November and my window was open because I forgot to lock it, and for a second in the dark I saw a roller glint and a glass sweating on a nightstand that wasn't mine. It was gone before I could sit up. The next day at the library, the interlibrary loan bin had a book on top someone ordered from another town. Churchyard Stories, Improvisations with the Dead. The stamp inside said Rowan's Aunt. I put it back in the bin because someone else wanted it and because my hands were already dirty from the charcoal.